Welcome to another Kundalini After Dark meeting. I'm your host, Brent Spirit, and today we're talking all about Kundalini, isolation, and loneliness. Fortunately, we've got 17 in the Zoom room with us. We've got a handful tuning in on YouTube as well. Thank you all so much for joining me live tonight. If you'd like to join us for the next After Dark meeting, the link is in the description if you happen to be listening in the archive. Special thank you to all those that have offered a donation at any point. I really appreciate it. It allows me to do this. As well to all those that have offered any engagement online, likes, subscribes, comments, ratings on Spotify. It all goes a long way. So thank you all so much. So today I'm going to ramble a little bit about this theme of Kundalini awakening, the process, and the loneliness that we can sometimes feel. And then I'm going to open the floor up for others to share as well. Please know that we're not here to discuss any medical advice. Our meeting tonight is not a substitute for counseling or psychotherapy. We're meeting here as lay people to have a conversation about spirituality. You can consider it education. You can consider it entertainment. I hope you feel educated and entertained at the very least. Thank you all so much for joining. Let's get into this here. So, loneliness, isolation. This process, of course, can really bring about this theme for many, if not all. I'm convinced that we all will face some degree of loneliness and isolation as we go through this transformative process. Now, we'll unpack why that is. But of course, even though we all may go through it, it doesn't make it any easier, right? It doesn't make it any easier. But it is something to consider that we're not alone in our aloneness, right? Others are going through this too and have gone through it as well. So tonight, we're here to hold space for one another. We can cry, we can vent, we can complain. We can feel totally alone in that aloneness together if you want to feel that. It's coming up for you. We can grieve the losses that we may have gone through to bring us to points of loneliness and isolation on our path. This is all welcome, okay? It's not egoic to feel lonely, right? It's not selfish or egotistical, right? It's human. It's human. So we don't have to use our spirituality to bypass or to rationalize away our loneliness or to justify why we shouldn't really be feeling this way, right? We don't have to use our spirituality to say, oh, if I'm feeling lonely, that's because I have attachment. I have attachment to relationships. I have attachment to human connection. This is an ego thing. No, it's not an ego thing. It's a human thing. It's a human thing. Okay. So it's all valid here. It's all valid. So earlier this week, I was listening to a talk by the author of The Body Keeps a Score. First name Bessel, I think. I forgot his name. My bad if he's listening. And he mentioned that there is the longest longitudinal study in history, which is the Harvard study of adult development. It began in 1938, and it is still an ongoing study. It initially started with 724 men, following them over their lifetimes to understand what makes people happy and healthy. The study has since expanded to include their spouses and over 1,300 of their descendants spanning 3 generations. So this study had a few key findings. Quality of our relationships is the strongest predictor of long-term happiness and health. Social connections improve physical health, mental health, and longevity. And loneliness and social isolation are associated with declines in health and well-being. Right. So this is the longest longitudinal study on what makes people happy and healthy. And of course, it's connection. It's connection. So that's how important it is. So we don't have to, like I said, try to spiritually bypass our feelings of loneliness. It's fundamental to us as human beings to have connection. And without it, naturally, there will be some discomfort. Okay. So with all of that said here, of course, as you know, my aim is to offer an empowered perspective, which is what I hope to do tonight, so that in time, whenever you're ready, you can begin to move out of any heavy feelings of victimhood associated with these periods of isolation and to make peace with whatever challenges you may be faced with on the path. Right. So a bit of a contradictory idea there, right? Yes, we're totally allowed and we should feel whatever we're feeling if we find ourselves in isolation. And then on the other hand, she can set the intention to overcome any victimhood around that together. Okay. So before I share some ideas to help you see perhaps your loneliness from a new perspective, I don't want you to think that I don't get it, right? I don't want you to say, oh, this guy doesn't understand. I get it, right? I've been through isolation. I've been through loneliness myself as a result of this process, right? Some of it was self-imposed in a sense, I willingly consented. I gave my informed consent to go on retreat, to sit in solitude and silence, right? To just be with myself, right? And other times it was without my informed consent, right? It was forced upon me, you could say, by the universe, by the process, by life, by other people, maybe, right? Either people took distance from me for whatever reason. At times I was having such a hard time with my process that I was forced to go into isolation and retreat because relating wasn't an option, right? So I've been there. I know what that's like. I know what that's like. In fact, this work here as Brent Spirit, this whole community, while it's driven and inspired by, the flow, by Shakti, by, some sort of higher plan, it seems, from my perspective at least, if there's a selfish impetus behind it, my own selfish impetus, it's to attract a community, people that I could relate with. And here we all are. So thank you all so much for being here with me. Because I felt so alone and isolated. That's why I said, I can make a community. I can find my people, right? So this is where this all comes from myself. So while I've gone through significant periods of loneliness, for the most part, I don't feel so victimized by it whenever this comes. I feel quite comfortable in it, actually. In fact, I'm newly single after coming out of an 8-year relationship only recently. So this whole theme has been sort of in the background for me of late, at least. And I'm exploring this new period in my life and looking at it not so much from loneliness or isolation per se, but actually from solitude. And I think that has to do with, at least from my perspective, it has to do with what's going on inside. Or you can be in solitude by yourself, or you can be lonely by yourself, right? So I feel quite comfortable of late. Fortunately, at this point in my life, I not completely alone. I've got some rock solid friendships spanning decades. I've got plenty of people to turn to for company and support, which was initially taken away from me, or I had to retreat from those friendships and connections. But through my integration process, I was invited back into the world, and lo and behold, people were there for me once again. And so I share that. It's a bit of hope for those who feel like, maybe they'll be alone and isolated forever. I hope not for you. I hope not for you. I'll share some more ideas about this. This weekend, actually, I had a really great time. I went to see a tribute band to Tool, the greatest band of all time. And by myself, dated myself, you could say. So that was awesome. If you don't know Tool, you have to. I could go on about Tool, but look up Tool's music video, Parabola. In it, you will see Alex Gray's animation depicting a Kundalini awakening process. It is the most beautiful depiction of Kundalini awakening process in Tool's music video. And if that doesn't convince you to listen to Tool, well, I don't know what will. As well, I went on another date by myself to see another incredibly um, inspirational group, the Trailer Park Boys, and their new movie, Standing on the Shoulders of Kitties. That was amazing too. Very inspiring. Not very spiritual at all. Very low consciousness, if you will. But I owe it to them for the Kundalini After Dark, actually, because the Trailer Park Boys have their own podcast called The Park After Dark, and they meet at night to talk about all sorts of degeneracy. And so I thought I could do the same thing. And so that's actually where I got the name Kundalini After Dark from, the Trailer Park Boys. So I don't feel like a victim. I'm enjoying the solitude. It's very fresh for me to be so comfortable in this solitude. And I share that with you just as hope, as hope. Right? I've been through loneliness, extreme loneliness, right? So much so that it drove me to create all of this. So I just want to paint a picture for you. So with that said, let's look at some empowering ideas that we can consider when it comes to isolation and loneliness. So like I said, we're not alone in our aloneness. It's actually a standard part of the path. It's standard, right? Jesus, the Buddha, name them. They've gone through their period of isolation, loneliness, solitude, retreat, silence, right? So the external world, including our relationships, can be a distraction from looking inward, right? Not always, but at certain times, we have to have all of our distractions stripped away so that we can really see what's going on inside. And there's just no other way. There's just no other way, right? We'd like there to be another way. We'd like to say, I'll look inside as long as I can, somehow avoid total isolation and loneliness. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be the case. Doesn't seem to be the case, right? Maybe for some, I'm sure, but generally speaking, at least some period of loneliness, of isolation seems to be mandatory, right? Because it's in that loneliness that we can actually contemplate, we can actually feel, we can actually purge, we can actually release, we can heal the deep-seated sort of primal wounds of abandonment, of grief, of betrayal, right? The parts of us that don't like ourselves, we have to face them, right? Because sometimes we maybe don't like ourselves, so we distract from that with the company of others. So how else to really face that, process it, overcome it, contemplate it? How else other than really going into it? And so isolation and loneliness creates the container within which all of that can surface, right? It's the container as well as the trigger for all of that stuff to surface for us to face. The more we resist those feelings, perhaps that's what causes the isolation to drag on, right? As well, another bit of a message of hope here is that most of us in some way or another will be called to outwardly connect with others, to express, to share, to relate after going through our process, after going through the most difficult periods of our journey, right? It only makes sense that the universe, that your karma, that your dharma, whatever, is going to unfold in such a radical way to completely transform you, right? And then obviously to put you to work in some way, right? I don't think that the universe is going to invest all of this energy into you with all of this really far out intense stuff. only for it to then just leave you alone to just be in some sort of meditative state by yourself. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, especially not at this time where there's an accelerated period of awakening and we need so many people out and about there to offer their support, either directly through some sort of light work, some sort of spiritual service, healing, teaching, etc., or indirectly just on an energetic level, right? Just by being in your heart and offering unconditional love, bringing some joy, bringing peace, holding space, right? So you go through all of this intense journey, this intense training, and then the universe leaves you just to not do anything with it. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, right? So right now you may be going through the training, but you can know that it's for a purpose, and that purpose has to do with connection with other people in some way, in some way. So this is a bit of something that you can contemplate and see if it sparks any hope, perhaps faith, faith being trusting that it's going to work out without yet knowing how or when, just having faith that it will because it makes sense that it will, right? As well, the transition itself from isolation or loneliness back into connection and community, that transition period may also be an important theme for you to explore actively as well. So it's not like suddenly you go through your period of isolation, loneliness, you do your work, and then now, like, you know, people are knocking on your door, like your phone won't stop ringing because everyone wants to connect with you and hang out with you and everything. I think there's a transition period where you have to kind of recognize, I think it's time for me to begin moving out. I think it's time for me to take a step back out into the world, take a bit of action in a sense. And that may bring up all sorts of self-doubt. It may bring up insecurity. And that may be how you inadvertently, of course, not by a conscious choice, but it may be how you make yourself lonely. Something to consider as well. We do have to cooperate and participate in our integration process out on the other side of this phase of loneliness. It most likely will be how we sort of overcome those feelings of self-doubt, of anxiousness, of insecurity, etc. Right? So yes, there is a bit of a balance between what we have to do actively and what the universe will kind of do for us. But we are participating in all of this. It's not just happening to us, it's happening through us with our active participation and engagement. So this is something to consider, right? You can ask yourself this question. Rather than thinking that the world is making you lonely, you can ask yourself, in what ways am I making myself lonely, right? Are you avoiding stepping out? Are you avoiding making attempts at connection, right? Are there opportunities there that you're kind of putting off? Are you saying tomorrow? Just contemplate. I know for some, that's totally not the case. Totally not the case for some. They're not avoiding. They're really just alone, really. But for others, as this phase begins to shift, there may be that transition period where people are kind of giving some invites and some opportunities, and it's your job to take them, right? So that's something to consider as well. What ways might you be making yourself lonely? What power do you have over the situation that you may not be fully tapping into? So I know it's a bit of an intense question. I know maybe it sounds like I might be blaming you. I don't want you to take it that way. Just know that what I'm saying is that we do have a role here in forming connections. They don't just happen to us when it's time. We have to actually participate. Okay. So I'll pause there. Let's see what others have to share tonight. But first, let's just take a brief moment here just to sit together and tune in to the group, right? We're joining from all over the world here. But many of us, if not everyone, has been here before. We're starting to get to know one another more deeply. We're definitely not alone, right? We're definitely not alone, right? So if you were really doomed, well, then this community, right, wouldn't have hit your radar. The flow wouldn't have brought you here, right? So clearly, the integration process is underway to some degree. And I know I'm speaking almost very broadly today as if we are all in this really lonely and isolated place. I know that some of us totally aren't. And if you happen to be on the other side of some intense loneliness and isolation, I invite you to share as well to inspire, support us today. So let's sit together and just tune in just briefly. And then we'll hear from everyone else. Thank you all for being here. We're not alone. So let's hear from everyone else tonight. If you're not one that shares often, I invite you today to maybe speak up a little bit. We'll get a bit of a dynamic conversation going. You can share, of course, about this theme, but anything goes really. If you want to take it to a different direction, you're more than welcome to. If you have questions for myself or the group, if you have responses to questions, it's all welcome. You can share on audio or video. You can type in the chat, and I'll do my best to read it. Let's see where this goes. And if you're listening in the archive, a bunch of links in the description. If you'd like to join us for the next After Dark meeting, there's some free courses, etc. Check it all out. Let's go over here and hear from Tawny.
Hey, aloha, everybody. So I love what you just said, Brent, so much. And I just wanted to share this little poem by Hafiz. I put it in the chat. But I think it sums up my experience with loneliness and where I go with it. So it's a don't surrender your loneliness so quickly. Let it cut you more deep. Let it ferment and season you as few humans and even divine ingredients can. Something in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, my need for God absolutely clear. That's Hafiz. And, there's different, degrees or spectrums of loneliness. And I deal with them all differently. But when I get way lonely, which I think is natural for us as humans, because we are all we're made of the same stuff and we're made from our one source. At least that's my thoughts. But we are so individual, and everything is really, comes down at the end of the night when we go to bed. We are going alone, even if we got someone sleeping there. And so when I get in one of those really hard spots, this is where I go. This poem says it all. It's like something in my voice so tender, my need for God absolutely clear. And I tell you, some of my absolutely best moments have been in the intimacy of aloneness, where I truly hold myself, or God holds me, however you want to say it. And I grow so much in these times in just knowing, wow, there is something more here than just me and my little story. There is really something so beautiful that lives inside me and cares about me. And I feel that same love that I have caring for others deep in my heart. And and so I just go in a very special way when I get in that really hard place. And I, like Brent, am someone who has known, especially through this process, like the first 3 years were extremely alone. Not that there weren't people around me, but nobody could reach me, and I could reach no one from where I was. I was in a whole different place. And it really wasn't explainable by words, or I chose not to because I knew it wouldn't like land on ears that could hear. But it was it was really, really difficult. I did know that this was some kind of a spiritual process necessary for me to go through at this time, and I had a quite deep faith in that, which I got to say is the only thing that really got me out, because there was no out for a long time. I was way underground, okay, or wherever you want to say I was. Um, but I too, part of this process is I left a marriage of 20 years. And so in the last year and a half, I've really got a chance to be alone in my day-to-day stuff and learn how to be alone. Ever since seventh grade, I've either had a boyfriend or a partner or a husband. So it was very different. And honestly, I just love it. I really, really like being with myself, and I like organizing my days. Um, and like, even when I'm with people, I think, oh, it'll be really nice to go home and be, do my own thing. That's most of the time. And then sometimes when I'm with friends, especially if they have husbands or whatever, and they all go home together and I go home alone and I go, ooh, this hurts for a minute. Um, and I do feel that cut, as it says, let it cut you and let it cut you more deep. And I just, but it doesn't take too long before I get my own rhythms and really happy. So I think I might be out of the process to say that it's bad. I say that if it's hard, then I know where to go. If it's not too bad, I know how to reach out. It's I don't see it as negative at all. I see it as a really just part of life, but not negating the fact that it hurts like hell sometimes, and you just like can't hardly believe it, and you just want someone to really tell it like it is. But with these communities like this one, Brent, and we can share our story, and there's a lot of healing in that. So anyway, that was my couple cents there.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing the full arc of your journey, Tawny.
Yeah, thanks
Very
for
empowering.
listening.
Thank you. Got some love in the chat here from Siobhan, from Sophia, saying thank you. That was beautiful. Really beautiful. Really beautiful. All in, yeah, you covered all the themes there. Beautiful.
Yeah, well, they're ever present, all the themes, aren't they?
Right. Thank
All
you.
right, aloha.
Aloha. Let's hear from David.
Thank you, Brent, and hats off to you and Tony. That leads me in beautifully to what I've experienced and what I'd like to share also. This whole episode of Kundalini is certainly a massive transformation, mentally, spiritually, physically, and every other way. And I've certainly felt lonely and isolated with it, and been a long path. But what I found was I keep remembering an old medium that I was working with years ago, and she held her hand right high in the air, and she said, "Just go straight to the boss." And I've never forgotten that. So if you think of quantum physics, the quantum field is almost infinite. Well, it is infinite as far as I'm concerned, but it carries information beyond our physical senses. So they understand how the physical senses only pick up 1% of the energy, which carries the information of 1%. So the other 99% is available to us. All the help and care and assistance and guidance is there if we tune in. And I didn't actually know what the topic was today when I came along, but yesterday I was just reading Yogananda. I could just read out a little bit of what he's suggesting years ago. Suffering creates a unique sensitivity in the heart, making it more receptive to divine truth, opening the door to spiritual awakening. When human efforts fail to alleviate suffering, the soul begins to seek higher power. Your soul yearns for the eternal joy and peace of God. In other words, the suffering comes to remind us that this world is not your true home, urging it to seek refuge in the divine. Yogananda often explained that suffering serves as a wake-up call for the soul for the eternal joy and peace of God. Some time ago when I was going through all this, you share this little guy. He was pretty cute. I don't know whether you can see him. He
Is that
stood
a
out.
little elf?
Can you see him? I don't know. You flicked
Yeah.
off the video. Yeah, I don't know what you'd call him. It doesn't matter. But he
Mhm.
stood out and he just looked like he was waiting. And then this came. This is a quote from Bob Dylan, a musician. Jesus tapped me on the shoulder and he said, Bob, why are you resisting me? I'm not resisting you. Are you going to follow me? I said, I haven't thought about it before. He said, well, you're not following me, you're resisting me. So I surrendered in the loneliness. And lo and behold, the 99% of the other information in the field, well, a fraction of it, because I just believe it's like the smallest claw on a chook scratching the surface of Mother Earth. The information that came through was beyond this realm. And, it made me realize that we are eternal beings, that the true identity is awareness, and that can go anywhere.
Mhm.
And the help that's available in that meditative state or that loneliness is actually a gift. If you sit with an open heart of profound gratitude and the connection for the divine, it's amazing what will come. So that's been my personal journey. We're certainly not alone, by far from it. 99% of what's out there is also with us. Call it whatever you choose. Spirit guides, masters, they're all there holding our back. So just sit in the silence, in the loneliness, which is the gift of waking the soul back to its home. So thank you, Brett.
Oh, thank you, David. Absolutely beautiful share. As always, I really love that idea that you shared from Yogananda, right? When the human efforts are futile, then the spirit, the soul starts to search. Beautiful. Very, very empowering share. Thank you. Thank you, David. I hope others can hear the hope being shared tonight. Hugo here with some more hope. Hugo shares, this process has not been in vain. My loneliness has now turned to so many new connections. One of these are men's sharing circles, one of which I'll be hosting tomorrow. Amazing. Amazing. Another one on the other side of a phase of loneliness, saying, hey, connection, connection is coming. Thank you, Hugo. That's awesome. Awesome that you're facilitating the sharing circles. Hey, Tom.
Just a thought interesting about how Kundalini leads us to what we need. And even if we don't want to be led, uh, you don't realize till later that that's just what I needed or brought me to what I needed. In my case, it was someone mentioned men's groups. Well, I'm in a peer group of people who have suffered lifelong chronic mental illness. And uh, it's just so much fun when you'd think it would be all like, pity and all sorrow, but these people all of them are that I've met there are pretty smart and have had to adjust to some really harsh conditions in their lives, especially being abandoned by family and friends. However, they've really made the best of it. That's one of the things you can go and look for things like that, but to be brought to a group like that when you feel abandoned is really quite wonderful. It gives you a whole new circle of friends, maybe who are better for you, more thoughtful, more deep in their thinking, because they're asking the big question, why? Why did this happen to me? So that was a lovely thing to realize just this week, that after a year with them, it really has an impact. The other thing was we discussed it in the group, was how much of this, the feeling of loneliness, particularly not just the being alone, but of loneliness, is connected to what we've been taught we're supposed to have. I think of the old Christmas movie, which many of you may have seen, called "So What." Beg your pardon. It's a Wonderful Life, where James Stewart, they play kind of a stereotypical or iconic male and female, almost in mythological terms. You're supposed to have the family, you're supposed to have this and that, and tragedy happens. But it's so beautiful in some ways, to come home and have your beautiful wife and your or husband or whatever, and your family, your kids, and everything. And those are things we're taught we're supposed to have. And if you haven't got them, well, there's something wrong with you, you know. In fact, it used to be quite common in the 50s, 60s. If you were 35 years old or 40 and you weren't married, well, there must be something wrong with you, because everybody else was. And you begin to think about that way yourself. What's wrong with me? Why am I not married? Why haven't I got kids? Why haven't I got a family? That comes a lot, because we're conditioned that way to want those things or to need those things. You really don't. Uh, in fact, I think I would agree with Herman Hesse, I think, toward his last chapter of Siddhartha. I think anyway, one of my takeaways from that was, before it's over, you really have to give up everything because you have to anyway. So you may as well do it consciously as a decision, and not desire attachment to things that are going to fade anyway. Either you're going to leave or they're going to leave. So uh, that's the reality of life. To make ourselves miserable by trying to run after what we're told we're supposed to have uh, is such a common thing, and yet it's unrealistic for many of us. So anyway, I just wanted to add that to the conversation, see what people think, and yeah, enjoy I'm a friend of mine right now. She's 80. Her husband's a little bit older, and on one hand, she loves her husband. On the other hand, she wishes he wasn't around anymore, because she wants time to herself. She wants to live life on her terms, not on his, because she's given up a lot of what she wanted. Uh, she says, "You're lucky, Tom, to not have that noose around your neck or that ball and chain." And I say, "Well, yeah, but I really want that ball and chain." And she says, "Yeah, but once you've got it, maybe you won't." So you never know. It just depends where you're at. Anyhow,
Oh, well,
painted
thank
myself
you.
in a corner.
Yeah.
Let somebody paint me out.
Thank you, Tom.
No, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Fun.
Yeah, I think it's Abraham Hicks who's saying something similar, Tom, who's um, you may think any relationship is better than no relationship. And she says, that's not true. That's not true. Right. And sometimes it seems like people are taken away or they leave or we have to distance ourselves or those relationships fall apart, friendships, etc., to make space for more meaningful connections like you described, the people in your peer group. I think that may speak to Red Pill Queen here, who shares the quality of my relationship sucked. I cut them off, including family, starting over with boundaries and standards. I'm slowly rebuilding with new quality friendships. Also, as a female, I don't feel safe going out at night or traveling alone. I traveled alone from modeling in my 20s. In hindsight, I don't think it was safe. Well, there it is, right? Space was made, and now new quality friendships are emerging in that space. Obviously, it's not easy to cut off low quality relationships, to have high standards for oneself, to enforce boundaries, but necessary. Necessary. Thanks for sharing, Tom, Red Pill Queen. Yabra shares in the chat here. Brent, I think you mentioned recently that some people do become hermits once they reach relative stability. Did I misunderstand? Yeah, so if I may contradict myself, typically what I've understood, there are three main sort of trajectories that this path kind of unfolds in. There is the one who becomes, enlightened, self-realized, and then spends time in isolation alone, like a hermit, deep in meditation and whatnot. Then there are those who go out and actively serve in some way, offering some sort of service, teachings, et cetera, et cetera. Then there are others who don't actively serve in an obvious, explicit way, but others find them, and when the others find them and approach them, then they offer some support and guidance and whatever. It seems that those who are called to be hermits don't have a problem with it. It's like I mentioned earlier, using that word. It's they've given their informed consent towards isolation. They're not doing it against their will or forced into it, right? And so for those who have this longing for connection, then perhaps connection is what's coming for you. Whereas for those who feel completely content with being alone, then it may not be necessary. But like I said, at this point, at least here, all of us connecting on a call, clearly none of us are hermits without the internet. I think it's a little different for us. So I'm sure at some point some of us may end up being a little bit of a hermit. Maybe me, I don't know. Let's see. But not right now. Let's hear from David.
Yes, thank you, Brent, again. I think the most important question we can ask ourselves, or certainly I ask myself, is, who am I? So I am suffering. I am lonely. There's suffering and there's lonely. But before that, there's an I. I am suffering. So there's the suffering and there's the I. So the distinction in the identity of traveling with meditation is in the I, which is singular. So you're leading all physical form in a state of consciousness, an expanded state of consciousness. That's where we're never alone and all the help is. So the I am is separate to this reality of duality in meditation. The moment you have one word or one identification, you're coming back in duality equals suffering or loneliness. Our true eternal identity is the I am. And the quickest way to get there, I've found, is just to be absolutely present. No past, no future. I've just arrived here. Oh, there's no suffering. There's no loneliness because I'm in the I am. I'm just the absolute awareness, the singular, eternal self that's evolving through the duality, the soul journey. So the suffering is not the I. It's not who you are. The loneliness is not the I. It's not who you are. The I is who you are. That's so helpful, I've found.
Immensely helpful.
That's the true identity. Thanks, Brad.
Well, thank you for breaking it down. Stare right in our face in the language, isn't it? Yeah. Even the word aloneness, right? All oneness. Alone, all one. Brilliant. Brilliant. Teresa shares here, aren't feeling lonely and being alone different? I've always enjoyed being alone and having sweet solitude. I have a tendency towards self-isolation. My problem has always been staying connected with others. Always said I was a monk in a cave. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think sweet solitude has to do with our relationship with being alone. We don't have to feel lonely in that. Yeah. Some may be inclined more towards solitude, perhaps not being afforded that is part of their challenge as well. Maybe I'm thinking, living in maybe a small house with a big family, nowhere to go, nowhere to run. That could be a different type of challenge. Yeah. I'm sure it goes both ways, like how Tom was sharing it. You're in a relationship. Some people don't want to be in a relationship. Some people that aren't in a relationship want to be in one. Some people that are alone want to be in connection. Some people that are in connection want to be alone. Thanks for sharing, Teresa. Tawny responding here to Tom. Beautiful, Tom. Yeah, society dictates certain standards that might keep us in a box, but spirit is not in a box. And there are a million ways to kneel and kiss the earth. In or out of partnership, thy will be done. I love my deep friendships. They are gold to me. Pure poetry. Tay's sharing here. I didn't feel alone during the hard parts of my awakening. Actually, I felt so much connected with my spiritual guides. The feeling was I was very supported. I don't know how to describe, but even though I cut off all my friends and most of my family, I was fine, very well. Did you hear about that, Brent? Great. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I presented it a little bit with too much of a dark element to it, if you will, but it doesn't necessarily have to be so painful. But the isolation, being alone, I think that might be necessary for at least a period. It might just be even a brief period of your journey, even a night, even like a single night, but to really face things in solitude and aloneness. I'm happy to hear that you felt you were very supported despite having cut off your friends and family. You were fine, very well. Yeah. I remember when I was going through really intense parts of my journey, I started to think that just like how you're describing here, that you felt connected with your spirit guides, I started to think that the Buddha couldn't have done it without the Bodhi tree. The Bodhi tree supported him, right? Something to think about there. That's what came to me is like, if he just sat in an open space, I don't think he would have made it. Because he sat with the Bodhi tree, he was able to make it. So maybe we're never really alone, though, of course, our human connections may fall apart. Spirit guides are there, trees, a mantra, perhaps.
Hi everyone. Um, wow, yeah, I've felt extremely isolated and alone in my awakening. Less now, like more, I've more been turning to it and loving that. But for me, it actually has to do with the episode about chronic pain. Like when I couldn't walk, um, I mean, seeking help like from healthcare, they couldn't really help me. There was my way of seeing it was that there was like gaslighting, like, oh, here's another, you might have this issue, maybe you have another issue, let's keep adding issues that you might have, or trying to add like medications and just kind of like really not having a solution. So I mean, that had a lot to do with me wanting to turn away from a lot in my life. And then later on, it was like, well, so I had to fix that myself. And that's a wonderful thing. And actually, yeah, I'm exploring ways I can share that with people and have that be part of a career. But at the time, that felt terrible. It felt terrible to like get the help that was recommended and for no one to have actual help for me. Um, and like, I don't know, there's been certain things that just have made me turn away. Like I remember just feeling so connected at one point, and it was like just people around me, everybody was just like, hey, who are you? You're familiar or something. Do I know you? Um, and it freaked me out. And I was like, I don't want like a ton of people like talking to me at once. Like, it just made me not want to socialize. So, I mean, there were ways that like I actually manifested more isolation because actually like at the point where like I couldn't walk and stuff, I also experienced attempted murder. And there were people that like wanted to help, or there were people that were really close or whatever. And my response ended up being like, get away from me, go away. And that totally makes sense. At the time, it just really hurt. It really hurt to have that experience and not know who to trust. It's really built a connection to myself and a connection to my soul, but also like a lot of other confusing things. Like I can see spirits, or I can talk to an individual and I can like see like, okay, so you have this spirit with you or something like that. Initially, I felt like that was all me, because I became very isolated and like suddenly I'm seeing these orbs, like various colors of orbs. And then like I became very aware of soul groups, how like one person's energy can come into a group and it affects the rest of what's in the group. Because I noticed that from like talking to certain people, and then I'd have another person bring something up that was related to that. Um, just all this awareness, that made me feel pretty isolated. And, I had some weird experiences like, gosh, so many of the videos online that just recommend like cut this person out of your life. That person's bad for you. Get away from them. And like the idea of boundaries, I feel like are just more healthy in general to consider before like all these people speaking their truth and say like get them out. I mean, like I said, I said that at one point, like get away from me. But I mean, that was a while ago. I'm just saying, yeah. Um, I lost my place. I lost my track of what I was speaking about for a moment, but um it's weird to have an awareness that's like psychic, or like I practice like shamanism and stuff, and then it's just like somebody comes up to you and what like you sense something like about them that normally like you would not want to know, or like, okay, so now I'm going to approach that conversation differently, I suppose. So it's almost kind of like the awareness kind of like got ahead of me. Um, and now I'm finding a way to like balance that, you know, it's getting a lot better. And now there are people like talking to me out of nowhere again, and like, okay, all right, with the boundaries in place, sure, we'll see. But with awareness of spoken word, or like, yeah, with awareness of like every word that's discussed, it's a little bit overwhelming, like awareness of all these different things. And then it's like, okay, well, you have to go function in the world now. Um, so so yeah, that's a
Mm.
lot. But like, oh, I think I was talking about the spirits. Like after some of these experiences, I felt like these orbs like going off. I was like, oh, well, that's just the central nervous system. Like I'm just aware of my central nervous system. But I mean, that's technically true. Like I feel like there's a medical way of looking at all of this and like going into the future with it. But it's also like a spirit. Like it's not all me or anything like that. So yeah, initially I had kind of felt that way. And with my physical issues, I had to get off of like whatever medication I was taking. Something that might have helped me in the past started to make me vulnerable in a way where like I couldn't manage it. I wouldn't know at the time. So it's been a lot of like adjustments with that too. Um, and yeah, like I shared, I think in the last group, experiencing unconditional love doesn't necessarily mean like going out and telling everybody or something like that. Um, so, we'll see.
Mhm.
Um, I am talking to people now. I've wanted to talk to people more, but I've had experiences where if I really am authentic and I am speaking from my heart, then that person could want to be like really close right away. Um, and yeah, it kind of takes time to learn a new context of speaking with all these things.
Yeah.
And to say no. I mean, if somebody like really wants to get close, I mean, it's okay to say no. It doesn't have to be like a huge issue. Saying no isn't necessarily like automatically rejection or whatever.
Mhm.
So yeah. Um, like I said, it's been really hard. Um, but it keeps improving. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to share. Everybody in
Thank
here
you.
seems like they don't experience loneliness. Everybody's kind of like beyond the whole thing. I don't know. Maybe I didn't hear somebody if they did share, but yeah. All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you, somebody, Galen in there. All right.
I think there'll be others listening in as well, in the archive, who may hear the messages of hope today. So many messages of hope. Thank you all so much. But I know that not everybody feels that way right now. Mark, thank you. Thank you for sharing some very interesting insights there. It sounds like your period of being alone served as a bit of like an initiation, right? We develop new skills, get in touch in a new way, develop boundaries, for example, the ability to recognize what they are and then, how to put them into effect. So maybe we can look at another way, like, when we get isolated, we get put into these sort of periods of loneliness so we can regroup, catch our breath. And then when we do return back into relationships, we can rebuild from a much healthier, more conscious place. Right? Maybe that's part of why as well. So very interesting themes there. Yeah, others here are sharing that they feel lonely. Yeah. Yeah. Let's hear from Galen.
Um, I was planning on sharing and then I wasn't, and I've been going through so much just being in this chat right now. My heart is like beating out of my chest. I've been crying at one point. I just like put my head down and like almost fell asleep. Um, I I wanted to share so many different things and my mind just went completely blank. I can't help but, which is like, all right, that's fine. If I can share anything, like maybe I can share just like the energy of like just like extreme isolation and loneliness. Like I feel like you guys like don't get it, or like I not even that. I just like I feel for myself in this particular area. It has been so absurdly extreme and so extreme. I don't have the words to even articulate it. Like I don't even know if I can continue more than that. I just like, if I can do anything right now, I feel like I can help better, like show what this process is like from like just being real and straight up. Like I know and it goes through shifts and I get so frustrated with myself too when I go through shifts and like I forget certain periods that I have experienced because that have been like just so painful and raw and deep and like just so much and like I'll go into this place where it's like honestly probably just for my survival. I can't access it anymore and like I'm not saying no one's experienced this, but I can say that in this moment, I'm being put in this place where I'm feeling so much of it. And like, it is just, you can't even put it into words. Like, I feel lonely even just in this call right now. It's, I wish I had more words. I don't know. I'm sorry. I like,
Galen, thank you.
I
There's
don't know.
nothing
I'm
to
apologizing.
apologize
Yeah, I
for.
just like truly. And I experienced so much loneliness and isolation during any of my awakening. Like, this is unreal. And it's been so long and it has been so extreme. And it's not to say that, like, it's like I'm not doubting any of the process. I don't feel like a victim. I do trust it. But it's there and it is so intense. And it's like, that longing for connection, even just like one person to like physically touch you or hold you, and it's not there for the longest time, like, and you can't access it in any way, shape, or form. Like, it's so intense and it's so extreme. And in this moment, like my brain can't even, usually I have like a lot of other things I can say in regard to it. I can't access it right now, and I trust I'm not meant to. Like I'll be that person that shows up with this feeling right now. I just like,
Galen, thank you for your vulnerability.
yeah, thanks for the opportunity to just
Yeah.
express this with others and stuff that I haven't before in different ways. But I guess I think that's all I was meant to share tonight.
Thank
Um,
you for sharing.
yeah.
Thank you. Let's go over here to Tani.
Oh, Galen, I have to say, as you sit there in all your beautiful, beautiful tears, all I want to do is run and hug you with such compassion and love for you. And, you know, I know where you're at. I've been there for almost 3 years. There wasn't a day I didn't completely break down. I was thinking that maybe someday I'd write a book called On My Knees, Hugging Mango Trees in the Middle of the Night. And the depths that it had to bring me to, it's not like I've forgotten that or forgotten like where you're at. And yeah, the mama part of me just wants to come and hug you from a place of knowingness, of a place of saying, I've been in your terrain and I might delve into that depth again. I just come out quicker now. You know, there's a different story than what was before. And also, I want to say about the hugs, like I was able to get a hug from my now ex-husband at that time, but it didn't reach me because he was very much one step removed from himself. So he couldn't hug me from that place
that I needed to be hugged from. And that's the place I'd like to hug you from right now. So bless you. You're a brave girl, and it will be different in the right time. But like, you really touched my heart. Thank you so much for your beautiful share.
Thank you, Tawny. So much love for you here, Galen. And anyone else going through anything similar. Even on YouTube, we have Shell sending you so much love. Sophia sending you so much love. Siobhan saying thank you. Lots in the chat here on Zoom as well. Thank you. Let's hear from David.
Oh, God, my heart goes out to you too. You're not alone. I've been to the lowest of lows as well. I don't know whether you were there when I showed you the picture of the journey from the darkness through to the joy of liberation and freedom. There's a soothing mantra which I'd love to share whenever you're feeling bad, because what the identification is not who you are. And it is, I divine am divine living brilliant white light. I divine am divine brilliant living white light. I divine am divine living brilliant white light. It takes a while for the neurons to join, but if you keep repeating that, it'll pull you out. You'll start to shift from the shadow and the darkness, which is what I went through, to more light, and it'll expand as you continue to stand in your own light, the powerful divine essence that you are. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I had a mantra like that as well during my really, really low, dark periods. It was, I love you. And I would hold myself, hug myself, and say, I love you, as if I was my own child, as if I was a parent, as if I was the child being held by the parent. Something like that. At times, it felt still too alone. And what I would do is I would hold a pillow and I would imagine loving this pillow because it felt like it could receive what I was offering in a way that I couldn't on my own. Like you're describing, David, maybe the neurons change or something. I don't know, but it got me through some really, really dark, dark times. And maybe those out there listening here, I hear you, David. I hear your mantra. Or maybe they hear me saying about, hug a pillow and say, I love you. And you're like, screw you. That's not going to work. I don't want to hear it. And I understand that too. I understand that too. That's why I don't have much else to say. It's hard to be in those places. Alma on YouTube shares here. I feel you. So much love to you and a big hug. Thanks for being here, Alma. We're really out here doing it. This is the work. This is the path. Thank you all for being here tonight and every time we come together. Like I said, this community came about as a way for me to soothe my own loneliness. When I felt misunderstood, unsafe, because I felt judged, I longed for something just like this, and here it is. So thank you all. Thank you all. And I hope that community can serve you as well in whatever it is that you need. Appreciate you all. It's a very powerful call tonight. Cat shares here. I'm sending you all so much love and gratitude. Brent, thank you for creating this community. And to all of you for holding space for one another and fighting off the loneliness together. Thanks, Kat. Okay, everyone. It's been a great time connecting with you all today.